In the course of my last video, I shared with you about what I call the seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet, which is a sheet on which, in real time, in the course of a class period, I designate a student who will keep records for me of course, attendance, absences, tardies, that sort of thing, but especially we'll write hash marks within each rectangle corresponding to the different students in the class. It's laid out as a seating chart, which those hash marks correspond to times when students volunteer information in class discussion. Because oral participation, especially in the first year for me, I give 50% of the weight of the grade is determined by, or it receives 50% of the weight in determining the grade that a student gets in a class, the sheer quantity of times the students participate orally in class discussion. And it's so critical that when you give such importance, and it's important to give such importance to oral participation in the first year, students need to speak regularly so that they become comfortable with speaking the language, so that it becomes the norm in their thinking when they come into the language class that this is a place where English is not used, and so that you can start to refine and hone the sentence structure as well as their pronunciation. It's so critical that they speak on a regular basis in class, and so oral participation is critical. And so as far as the grade is concerned, it needs to be weighted very heavily. And if you're going to do that, that requires you, therefore, to have very objective means of tabulating and evaluating oral participation. The student cannot see that whatsoever as a subjective grade that you have attributed to him or to her. It needs to be very objective. And so that's why I came up with that spreadsheet where very accurate data is kept in the course of class. And now we move on to the second step, is when the school day has come to an end. And you have this spreadsheet with all the data from all your different classes completed. You're going to place that next to your computer. It's on a piece of paper which you photocopied. You place it next to your computer screen, and you enter the data now into what I call the oral participation evaluation spreadsheet. It's to me, it's the most important tool that I created for myself in the course of my teaching. Because it, like I said, it gave a thoroughly objective means of evaluating student participation, and because it automatically, as one enters the information in this spreadsheet, it automatically establishes a grade for the student over the course of an entire quarter on the basis of the sheer quantity of their participation in class discussion. It allows me each evening, this is so important, it allows each evening for me to take that grade, which has been established automatically, to enter it into the school's online grade recording system. And so students on a nightly basis can see how their grade has changed based upon their specific behavior in the course of class that day. When I say behavior, what I mean is their willingness to participate and their participation, or their lethargy or their lack of participation in class. They see how their grade rises and falls day to day, and it's tied so tightly, very neatly, to their actual participation in class or lack of participation that day. And that really, for students, assuming you're in a school where students do care about their grades, if that's the case, it really impacts their participation in class, and therefore their development toward fluency. So I'd like to present to you now the oral participation evaluation spreadsheet. It was very complex to create. It may be somewhat complex to explain, but it is very easy to use. And that's what really should matter for you. So let me show you where it's located on the ULAT website, and then I'll go into an explanation as to how to set it up, and then how to use it on a daily basis. Here we go. You're going to go to the teachers section of the website. There we are. We're already there. Scroll down to resources for using the ULAT. And by the way, here, this one right here, the seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet, if you click there, you can download the sheet about which I spoke in my last video. Well, here you have the oral participation evaluation spreadsheet, which you also can, and we're going to download at this time. And here you see the link to this particular video in case you need a further explanation or reminder how to set up and how to use the oral participation evaluation spreadsheet. I should have come up with a shorter name. I could call it the OPES, I suppose, but what would that mean to anyone? Here we go. I'll download it now. And it opens. As you see, it's an Excel spreadsheet. And let me make that a little bigger, easier to see. Okay, now let me go to the top here. There we go. There is room on this spreadsheet for numerous classes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. If you find that you don't have enough class space, please let me know. I'll be glad to adapt it for you, and I can email it to you with more classes provided. However, you see that each class has room for up to 39 students. May you never have that many. I have on one occasion. And you see we have listed here student 1, student 2, student 3, and we're going to add in the actual names of the students in just a moment. Now, everything which is in dark blue, this represents a cell where you can add data, you can add information. Everything which is not in dark blue, for example, the gray here or the red, those are cells which behind those cells there are formulae which cause the OPES to work. And they've been protected so that you can't add data into them. If you were to add data, if you could add data, it would cause the spreadsheet not to function. And so I'll show you if I tried to type in here anything. Whoops. Enable edit. Here we go. Scroll over here. If I try to add any information in here, it will give me a warning that this cell or chart you're trying to change is on a protected sheet. Okay, so fortunately you can't ruin the functioning of the spreadsheet by adding information where you should not. It can only be added where you see information or you see the cells in dark blue. Now, notice that the cells in the upper right hand corner, some of them have a triangle, a red triangle. This means there's a comment associated with that cell, and if you put your cursor, as you see, on that cell, it will provide you with an explanation as to what to do with that cell. Okay, so here it says insert class period, and I will put in there 1. This is the first hour of the day. All right, and then the second cell down here with a little red triangle here, it says insert course name. So I'll put in here Spanish 1, SPN 1. All right, and then the third one down says insert number of students in class here. That's very important. And remember, when there are drops and adds in your class, make sure you change this number, because this number will determine the reasonable number of class participation points, you might say, or times when students volunteer information that you can expect from an individual student in the course of an entire class period devoted to class discussion. And so I'll put in here 10. Say there are 10 students in this class. This means that I would expect in a normal class period that students would volunteer information on 7 different occasions, each individual student in the course of the class. All right, and then the last one down here is the total number of entire class periods devoted to class. Not too critical, but it's important for me to make the program function. If you want a thorough explanation of all these different cells, go to chapter 12 of my ebook, In Other Words, which is located on the website. Okay. In fact, chapter 11 is also a useful one because going back to the previous video, talking about the seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet, that explains how to use that sheet in chapter 11. So chapters 11 and 12 are important ones in my ebook, dealing with how to hold students accountable for class participation and how to objectively evaluate their participation in class. Okay, let's go to student 1 now. In fact, let's add some names in here. I'll start throwing some miscellaneous names in here. Bob, Jim, Missy, Mary, Laura, help me here. Steve, I like that name. Phil, whoops. I already have a Jim. I'll put a Jim number 2 in here. Mike and Sally. No one is called Sally anymore, are they? Let's try Anne. There we go. That's a good name. Okay. The rest of them we could actually go ahead and delete. The rest of the names or the places for names, I'll delete them, although it's not critical you do so. Okay, so I have the names in place. In fact, you notice here that this first cell shows that you're to record student's name here. Now, let me explain what these three columns are about. You see reg-esque, that means rec-esque, that means require or requested excuse, or excused, to be excused from class is the idea. This is totally optional. In fact, all three of these columns right here are optional. I'll explain what they are, but you can choose if you want to use them or not. It says optional cell in which to record the quantity of times a student requests to be excused from class. This figure has no bearing on their grade. It will not change their grade whatsoever, no matter how many times you indicate that they request to be excused from class. The only purpose is if you see that students are starting to too frequently be absent from class for a period of the class period, to go to the restroom, to go to the locker, whatever it happens to be, that could be helpful to you and helpful to relay that information to their parents. Next, negative participation. Recording here the quantity of negative participation points for disruptive behavior automatically reduces the student's oral participation grade. Now this is an important element because it depends upon really your philosophy of education. Do you, or at least language education, do you believe that students who disrupt in the course of the class period, does that hinder the other students to such an extent that their own grade should be impacted by it? So if you were to enter in here, say for example a number 3, there's a certain percentage of points that would be deducted from the student's overall oral participation grade because they are being disruptive in the course of the class. Again, that's totally optional. You can choose to use it whether or not you want to. And then the next column is very similar. Recording here the quantity of unauthorized uses of English, which is in essence almost the same thing. It's a negative participation, type of negative participation that will automatically reduce the student's oral participation grade as well. Again, optional. You can choose to use it whether or not, whether you think it's appropriate or not. All right. So to the right of this bar is where all the data regarding students' daily oral participation will be entered. Okay. However, above this red line, you can actually, by the way, we have already in essence set up the OPES, the spreadsheet for its use. We have the class period indicated, we have the name of the course, we have the total number of students in the class, we have the students' names. We're done. And so really on the first day of class or prior to the first day of class, that's all you would need to do for each of your different classes going down this sheet. Very simple. There is another step which you can take to set up the spreadsheet to be used, and that is to enter in here the dates of your classes. Because on each of these dates, you're going to have maybe a class discussion of 10 minutes or 45 minutes or 5 minutes or a varying lengths. And don't worry about that. I won't explain this here. Chapter 12, by the way, will explain it if you look at my ebook. But the grade is not impacted by the duration of the class discussion on a particular day. That's all taken into consideration by the formulae that are built into this spreadsheet. But I won't deal with that now. So here you have, it says, record in this row the month of the class discussion in numeric format. And so let's put in here 9 for September. That's the first. And let's assume the first day of class is the 4th of September. I have no idea this year if that is accurate or not. So down here in the second cell or second row, we are indicating the date, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th of September. All right. And so I could scroll across here and copy right. And then I'll put in here 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I don't know where Labor Day falls. We'll just pretend this doesn't exist. And here I'll put 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 7. Oh, that's too many days in a week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be the 18th, and this would be the 19th, etc. And you can go all the way across, filling in the entire row with all the dates on which of the classes for this particular quarter of the year. Okay, the spreadsheet has enough room for a quarter. So if you are on a semester basis without quarters, you would simply create a new spreadsheet at the end of the first 1/4 of the school year. All right. Now we've set up the the spreadsheet to be used. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start adding on a daily basis, and this is what you do at the end of every school day, adding in the data, which has been recorded in the course of your classes. So I'm going to put in some fictional numbers right here. Let's assume we had a class discussion of about 25 minutes. The duration has no significance whatsoever in determining the grade, but say it took about 25 minutes. And in the course of it, Bob made 3 comments. He participated orally in the class on 3 different occasions. And then Jim twice, Missy once, Mary 7 times, Laura was feeling a little shy about the foreign language and didn't say a word. Steve, he spoke on 4 occasions, although I would expect more out of him. 9 for Phil, who was particularly verbose. 2 for Jim, 1 for Mike, and 5 for Anne. You can see as I enter this information already that the grades for the students' oral participation for the course of this quarter appear right here in these 10, in this column, oral participation score, and in those 10 different rows. Okay, and just to make this, just to make this a little more complete, I'll add in information for the next day as well. I'll just copy some and paste to do this quickly, and we'll add a 3rd day as well. And let's go like this and like this. Okay, now you see we have some blanks. And by the way, you saw the grade change on every occasion. Okay, the grades are relatively high, and I'll talk to you in a moment about how you can avoid grade inflation if you feel the grades are inappropriately inflated. In any case, here we have 3 days in, the 4th of September, the 5th of September, the 6th of September. I've entered the students' oral participation at the end of the school day, each day, and this is their grade, which I would take to the school's grade recording system online, enter that information on a nightly basis so that students see how their participation in class daily affects they can tie it very tightly to their behavior in class. It will daily affect their grade, okay? Now, what if a student's absent? It's not fair if a student's absent. For example, let's assume that Missy on the 6th of September wasn't in class. Now, why should her grade be diminished because she was sick, the poor thing? And so how can we make allowance for her absence to make sure that her grade was not negatively impacted? Well, I want to explain how it works. You can go to chapter 12 if you want to see more about that. Of my ebook, but I'll simply show you what to do when a student is absent. Watch what happens to her grade. It's currently 88. I'm going to put in a capital A. That indicates absence within that particular cell on the 6th of September. All right, now watch. I hit that. Her grade is shot up to 100 at that point because she was doing great previously. She'd been saying sufficient numbers of things, numbers of statements in the course of the class discussion. And let's assume that Steve, good old Steve, who already has 100, let's take somebody with a lower score. Sure, I'll take away Bob's participation on that day, and we'll say Bob was absent too. He had a 74. While Bob is absent, I'm going to put in an A, capital A, in that cell. And his grade now was not negatively impacted by his absence. His grade is 87. You see how it increased once I indicated that he'd been absent on that day. Okay? Now there's 2 more things really I want to explain about this spreadsheet. But you see how simple it is to use. You set it up very quickly by putting in the course period, the name of the course, the number of students in class and the students' names. And then if you want to, in advance, you can set up the different dates of the year. And you're done. That's something you would do before the school year begins. It would be very quick, take you an hour maybe, for all the different classes you have to do. Probably less. And then what you do simply after that, every single end of the school day, every day, you're going to add in the data for how many times students participated, and then of course add in the absences to make sure students are not negatively impacted by their absence as far as their grade's concerned, and you're done. It's very simple to use, complex to have created, complex maybe a little bit to explain, but very easy to use and very valuable because students know that what you're doing is totally objective. It has nothing to do with how you feel about their participation. And then secondly, students see that what they do on a daily basis will impact their grade, and they'll see it nightly as the grade has been entered online. Okay. Now, I said there are two more things I want to explain. Here we go. First of all, I don't know about the part of the country where you live, but where I live in Michigan, it becomes, by the month of February, winter becomes weighs very heavily on us. It's tedious. The snow, the slush, the cold, the inability to go outside a great deal, being closed up inside the home, or especially for students, being closed up inside the classroom, causes lethargy. And that lethargy translates into students kind of slumping in their chairs, not really wanting to participate in class discussion, nor in anything else as far as life is concerned. And basically sitting back and saying, come on, teach me. I dare you, having that attitude. And that puts pressure on the teacher. The teacher has to become an entertainer, and even in being as expressive as possible and as entertaining as possible, students are still basically, they're still lethargic. And so there will be times when you will ask questions, open-ended questions. For example, qu'est-ce que vous avez fait hier soir? What did you do last night? ¿Qué hicieron ustedes anoche? And you want the students to give you a whole bunch of responses about the things they did last night in the past tense. But they're all just slumped over and no one wants to raise their hand and say anything. Well, what you can start to do at that point is to start to answer your question. When you see that you give them a reasonable period of time in which to respond, if they're not responding, you start to answer your question for them. And when you start to answer the question for them, you have the person recording on that the seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet. I should have come up with easier names for these things. You have them recording your participation as well. And at the end of the school day, you will enter in, for that particular class, the quantity of times that you participated in class discussion right down here on this black line. Black is quite appropriate because it's a very negative kind of a thing for the students. Let's say on 12 occasions. Remember, by the way, let's go back up the top. Remember that. Let's take Bob. Bob's grade currently is an 87. Let's assume that I had, on 12 occasions, I had to answer my own questions because students were just sitting around. And I put in here 12 times that I had to answer my own questions and make comments. Go to the top now. Look at Bob's grade, 82. If you on one occasion show the students the spreadsheet and show the impact that your participation has on their grade, they will thereafter fight you to answer the questions. They will not allow you to answer questions for them. They will snap out of their lethargy. I found that's a very, very valuable facet or aspect of this spreadsheet. The other thing I want to point out is, let's assume that we look at these grades, all these hundreds. I'm being too easy on them because really they're not that great. They're not necessarily participating that readily in class. There is a means of ratcheting up or decreasing the grade inflation, you might say, on the basis of your judgment as to whether these grades are authentic or not, or are really consistent with the student performance. And that's found right here, degree of difficulty. It's found at the end of every class section on this sheet. Notice if I put my cursor there, it says, enter one of the following numbers to adjust the degree of grading difficulty. If you put a 50 in here, it means you're a tough grader. It says difficult. If you put in a 90 here, it says easy. You're a pushover. Maybe the students' grades are really low and you think that they deserve better. You can adjust their grade accordingly. So remember, Bob had an 82 after I made my 12 comments in class. And by the way, all the other grades changed too. Even the hundreds have come down, although you can't see at this point. And if I were to continue orally participating in class because the students weren't answering, those hundreds would turn into 95s, etc. eventually. In any case, so Bob's grade is 82. Watch what happens when I change this to a 50, which means I'm becoming a tougher grader because I don't think the students really deserve the grades that they have. Let's go back up to the top. Now Bob's grade is a 73. You can see how I've ratcheted up the degree of difficulty of getting a good grade in the class based upon what I think is a realistic assessment of students' actual performance. In the same way, if I were to change this to the easy one, 90, I'm sure everybody's going to have 100 now. Let me scroll to the top. And indeed, almost everybody has 100 at this point. Bob is still lagging behind, but even he has a 91. He's pretty content. Okay? I think that's it. I've taken 25 minutes to explain to you something that took me a long time to create, but which I used for years, and other teachers have used for years, because it's a very powerful, a very helpful tool to ensure that grades are objective and that students recognize that they need to participate orally in class. Remember where you can find it? You can find this if you go to the teachers section of the website. You'll find oral participation evaluation spreadsheet. Click on that link or that green button. It will download for you the spreadsheet. If you ever have any problem using it, please email me. I'd be glad to explain further how to use it if necessary. Even if you find there are mistakes, if things aren't working, that's very feasible. Since this is a rather enormous spreadsheet, please let me know as well, and I'll update it online. All right, thank you.